And I know how tonight will play out. And I'm not endorsing anything. What I will do is say I completely understand the rage once again. And I will say the men of Belfast are not as soft as those in places like Southampton. And that's the government's fault. Their anger is not the symptom of this disruption. Their anger is not the symptom of these demonstrations. Their anger is the symptom of a system that leads to these things. That is the cause of this disruption. That is the cause of this division. That is the cause of this hatred. And it is pure, cold hatred for these invaders, for these animals. And that is your fault. That is the fault of the government. That is the fault of the courts. That is the fault of the human rights lawyers. That is the fault of the international finance, which imports these savages. That is the fault of the international treaties that imports these savages. That is not the fault of the British people. If it was the fault of the British people, time and time again, they would have voted for migration. The British people have never, ever voted for migration. They have never, ever had an election where they voted for higher migration. It's never been on the ballot paper. It's never been in anybody's manifesto. Yet it was enforced on them without our consent time and time again. You can't blame the reaction of the British people for your decisions, for your actions. You can't blame the anger of the British people for the behavior of these savages that were forced into our neighborhoods against our will. There was no consent. This is not democracy. This is pure tyranny. This is pure torture. This is literal denial of our civility, our society, our civilization. It is a denial of our peace, of our safety. And this is the mistake the government are making, and maybe it's intentional. But they're heading into a position where most people will lose it. Most people will deny their help anymore. They've been pleading for help for decades. You saw the rise of National Action. You saw the rise of the National Front. You saw the rise of the BNP. You saw the rise of Brexit. You saw the rise of Reform, of Restore. And every single one of these movements had a key focus around them. And that was an anti-immigration focus. Every single one of those movements were focused on the British people, the British way of life, the safety of the British people, the demographics of the British people. That was the foundation of them all. Time and time again, the British people have voted against migration. We've had governments promise us consecutively, the Cameron government, the May government, the Boris government, time and time again promising an end to mass migration, a limiting on net migration. And time again, the British people were betrayed. And it doesn't take a genius to figure out where this goes. And what the government are failing to recognize is that the more they fail to do their duty, the more they fail to protect the British people, the more they fail to put our interests, our future first, eventually, and this is the fear that the entire establishment should be thinking about, should be concerned about. This is what I'm concerned about. Because God Almighty, believe you me, this is not the outcome that anybody wants. They are going to force ordinary British men and women to take the law into their own hands. And that will be the outcome. Everybody knows it. No one is advocating for that. Nobody wants that. Nobody has ever wanted that. Everybody has continuously tried to vote against that. Everybody has continuously tried to move away from that. And now we suffer 3 more years to a general election. Now we suffer more deaths. Now we suffer more violence, more British lives lost, more trauma on the British people. Because the government, the politicians, the elites fail to protect us, fail to put our interests first. And unless serious change is taken quickly, my fear is the British people will no longer rely on the government for protection. They will take it into their own hands. And this is why, when they refer to people like me as the extremists, as terrorists, they call people like me domestic terrorists. They probably call a lot of you domestic terrorists for your beliefs. When they call people like us domestic terrorists, but they refuse to call the animal that is beheading people on the street a terrorist, it sets a precedent of where their concern is. It sets a precedent of what they truly believe, of who they value, of the hierarchy of our society. And we still remain the moderates. We still remain the ones advocating for a peaceful form of remigration. We still remain the ones trying to secure the future of the British race in the most political and peaceful and civilized way possible. Yet every time our hand is smacked away by the establishment, every time we are denied that peace, every time we are denied that political round, and you wonder why the British people are losing faith in our political system. Can we even bear 3 more years